Good morning, everyone. This is Anthony Metivier. We're going to talk about how to become a memory master, all related to the work we do over at magneticmemorymethod.com. See, Crone Woman Walking is already in the house, just got back from New York and had some license plates PAO practice. Excellent, excellent. Well, we're going to talk about the importance of practice today. Buongiorno, Chanel. Good to see you here. And we're also going to do something, a little bit of a test. I've got a phone number that's going to come up on the screen here in a minute and see if anybody wants to turn this into a live call-in show as we focus on you becoming a memory master. And we'll want to talk about what that is a little bit first. But if you're excited, get your fingers ready to dial, because I'm curious to see how and if this will work to hear some of your voices rather than just see typing all the time. But if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And one of the things about mastering your memory is I got a email today, or a message rather, the rare time I was checking Facebook and doing some stuff there. And someone was asking, basically, how do I master my memory? Got a new job, forgetting things 3 days later, etc. And I got kind of interested and looked at this guy's profile. And his answer was his most recent post. He had posted a video of this person, and this person was morbidly obese. And then the person did a bunch of stuff, which, I didn't watch the whole video, but I scrubbed through it a little bit, and he was, doing what you do to lose weight. And he mastered his body. And, I just responded to this guy, look at your last post. Memory training is just the same. You get in the dojo and you do it. So Sean is here. Thanks for saying hello, Sean. Good to see you over there in New Jersey. And Chanel says, can you put the phone number in a written format? My screen reader can't read it. We will type that into the chat for you when I am ready to start receiving calls. But thank you. If you be the first to dial that number and help me test that it works, that would be a great honor and a privilege to speak with you today. And again, if you're just joining us, we're going to do a call-in component, and that number will appear in the chat and on the screen in the very near future. I should have put it in the description, actually, but where exactly? There we go. All right. So, yeah, it's really interesting to me, and I raised this point because this guy has a clue in his own posting history. You just need to train your memory. And if you want to become a master of your memory, then what you're going to need to do is practice, train it. And we're going to talk about how to do that. And I got basically a lot of things to share with you about how that's going to work. 7 in total, but of course, the great Hydra turns 7 into 70 very, very quickly. So if you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and soon that number will appear on your screen. And yeah, practice is very, very important, very essential. And it is the only thing, because the principle to becoming a memory master can be really brought down into easy, simple perspective by thinking about the Abbott Principle. And there you go. There's that number. Let me put it into the chat for you if anybody wants to dial up. What is the Abbott Principle? It is very, very simple. Abba is a Hebrew word, and when Moses goes to see the burning bush there, or the burning bush appears in his presence, he, basically wants to figure out who that dude is, and he says, I am becoming that which I will become. And that is what you do first and foremost to become a memory master, is you realize you don't get to master your memory as an end goal. It is something you do. And this book, A Question of Memory by David Berglas, makes it very, very clear. Memory is not a thing. It's a behavior. It's something that you do. If you haven't read A Question of Memory, you absolutely need to read it. And it's very hard to find. I got this dirty, nasty old copy. And I love when books, I can hardly open it here. It's so dirty and nasty and old that it's got this beautiful old receipt that was in it from the London transport. Doesn't really give me a year, but it's so beautiful. I wonder if we can make that a little more visible. Anyway, very interesting book. I think that there's a reprint actually that Vanishing Magic has put out, so you could probably get a much nicer copy. Anyway, there's the man himself. Definitely a memory master. Masij is in the house. Good to see you. All right. So I'm becoming that which I'll become. Regardless of anyone's beliefs or anything like that, what you need to understand about that passage is it's a revelation for how we all need to live our lives, is become that which we'll become. We are always now. We're in this present moment, and we are becoming that which we will become. And so that's the Abbott Principle. And when you want to become a memory master, you have to be that which you want to become. You have to be that. And there are some guiding principles. There are some qualifications. You will never be that if you don't put these things into action. I may not have every single thing here. Some of these things may be already in play for you, but I doubt you're going to get anywhere without all of these things in play, at least not as quickly as you could. And always happy to be wrong about these things. So if you need to correct the record, please do. And that number there, if anybody wants to call, I am going to answer phone calls that dial that number during this time, of course. I think you'll probably get an answering machine or something like that, if not now. So do feel free to dial in 1-508-263-0530. Now, I haven't even memorized this yet, but let's see how we would memorize it. So 15 is Tal Wilkenfield, the bass player. 08 is Shiva. So now we got to have Tal Wilkenfield beating up Shiva with her bass. Bam! And so 26 is the mathematician John Nash. 30 is, of course, the mouse, Mouse, the character there. And 53 is the lamb. And now we got a hanging 0. Ooh, what are we going to do with that? Well, a snake eating its cookie. So those would be some images there for you. And there you go. But brand new number for me. And sometimes, it's very, very good to know your own phone number. Whoa, look at that. We've got a call. It's magic. So, hello, you're talking with me on the call. Can you say hello, please, to our... Hello?
Hello, Anthony, it's Chanel.
Chanel, how are you doing? Can everybody hear Chanel?
Do I need to speak louder?
Yeah, well, we're just sort of testing. This is a wild experiment I thought of at the last minute, bought a phone number, and away we go. So I can hear you, but I'm not sure that our audience can. Please type in the chat if you can hear Chanel. And keep talking.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Oh my God, I can't believe this worked. I'm doing good, thank you.
Wonderful. Good to hear your voice.
Let me down this to see if this works.
Well, thank you for helping me test.
People give out numbers. You're like, really? Does this work?
Well, this is obviously an internet number, so no worries of waking me up in the middle of the night. Not that I would have a phone in my bedroom anyway. That's insanity.
Oh, no.
So I'm not sure my mic is picking it up very well, but always time for an experiment. So.
Oh, yes, I can hear you just fine. Really clear, too.
Right. I'm just not sure that Cronewoman Walking is saying she can hear a little low, but you can be heard. It shows up on my level very, very well, but
right.
I'll have to experiment with getting a different system if we're going to do this so that it patches directly into the computer, but try and get you as close to the mic as possible. So, Chanel, how are you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing great, thank you.
What's going on with
I was watching.
Go ahead.
I just got back from being in Cleveland with my family for the Memorial holiday. Today was my aunt's 60th birthday. So I went to go visit her with a friend of mine and my guide dog. We just got back like an hour ago.
Amazing. So what can we do for you when it comes to memory? It sounds like, you've got it all sorted already in many ways. What's going on?
Actually, I had a question in language question, actually. When you're, like right now, I decided to to study some Korean using the Mango app and spaced repetition. And so when you learn something like for the first time, evidently is some of it's going to sink in your head. You're not going to remember every word you heard along the way. How can you recall? I can recall certain words. Certain words are starting to come in my head now that I've been doing it for 3 days straight. I just went through the first 15 lessons on 77 in 3 days. So stuff is starting to recall, but then there's certain words that I've learned recently. I know I'm going to have to go back over them, in order to remember them. But I mean, there's certain words that stick out more so than others.
Right.
I mean, is that kind of normal because I am starting this fresh? Is it new? This language is new to me.
So, yeah, that's a good question. It is normal for certain words to stick out more than others. That's called it's related to something called the Fun Restorff Effect. So there's going to be words that are just obviously filled with all kinds of uniqueness, and then there's going to be this abundance of words that just blur into a mush. Memory techniques are where you make every word have the Fun Restorff Effect. So the Fun Restorff Effect is making everything like a sore thumb, stick out like a sore thumb. And it takes practice, but if you really do it, then you'll be able to do that. And you'll actually be able to arrange all those words in a memory palace, which then enables you to use serial positioning to revisit those sore thumbs in a particular order that ensures that every single Fun Restorff Effect or sore thumb has equal primacy and recency, far better than any app will ever create for you. And even more so because you've put in the work to make it a sore thumb, so to speak, or this magnetic image that pops out at you. So that's the way that you battle against the fact that most things have what I call border blur. Words just have border blur, especially when it's new to you, right?
Right. Because this is the third Asian language I decided to tackle.
Right.
I just said I want to try this for shits and giggles and just see how far I can get with it, because I use a lot of spaced repetition, and I like Mango because of the way that they have everything set up. I'm just listening pretty much and repeating, and so in my mind I'm able to put the words in the order that they need to go in my head. So because this is a different grammar structure, there's, the verb is at the end of the sentence. It kind of reminds you of almost like German, except the second verb there's only one verb.
Okay.
It's not like two, and the other one's the second to the third word to the end of the sentence, and
Right.
But I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Right.
As far as the grammar
So
side of it.
here's one of the problems with that, right? Here's where you're killing yourself. Pretty convenient, pretty self-explanatory. I just listen and repeat and all that sort of stuff. That's great. There's nothing wrong with it. It's called back chaining. Some people call it back chaining. There's nothing wrong with that. However, these apps and programs and repetition on its own is a very slow and painful way of getting anything done. You remember the old Pimsleur tapes? A man, Mr. Johnson is at the airport and he wants to say hello to Mrs. Jones, and then it's they break it down, they back chain it and all that sort of stuff. You've got to intercede on the process. You've got to create some sort of mnemonic, some sort of magnetic hook, something that you actually can use to recall back, because otherwise it's just pure semantic border blurring mush, right? So, and as if you followed me for any time, you're not going to get any love from me for apps, except for the ones that actually help us, like the one that we're using right now to talk through the call. But if you're not actually actively engaging with each and every word that comes through there and giving each one the Fun Restorff Effect through memory techniques, then you're just, you're getting rote learning. Bang, bang, bang. Some stuff will get in. Probably less than 20%, and much less. It'll be whatever percent. I don't know. Some people are very skilled with rote learning, but don't look for magic in just passive
Right.
consumption and repetition. There's a way to get
Right.
a lot faster, and that's to create an image for everything. Even if you're not even going to put it in a memory palace, you'll get a better effect from just interacting with it at a creative level.
Right. Right, because since I'm not visual and since I learn everything by ear.
I'm not visual either.
Right. And so basically I'm going to go over this. Like I just did the first 15 lessons, so I know which words I remember, and then I usually, since I've never done Korean before, I kind of go back. I'll go over a few lessons, and then I'll see how I like it, and then I'll go back, and whatever it was that my brain was okay. It was focused at this point in time, but it became mush at this point in time. Let me go back to where it became mush.
Right. Yeah. Well, look,
focus on that.
You know the gold list method?
Yes, I do.
Right. So, unfortunately, that guy is often extreme about memory techniques. But the problem is,
right.
Like he just says egregiously strange criticisms of mnemonics.
Right. Well, it's funny because when I was doing Turkish at the beginning of the year, I was trying to remember the word for to shake. I was trying to pronounce shake a lot, and then I just took the word shake in the middle of the word, and I just remembered it because of a salt shaker.
Right.
Like, so I kind of put, especially if it's a word that I've never heard that sounds really foreign to me, I was like, well, wait a minute, there has to be something in this word I can use to remember.
There's always something.
Right.
Right. So how does this relate to the gold list?
Well, I actually just interviewed David James for my podcast show like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And so I told him, I said, I know of your method. I think it's an interesting method because you do the reverse translation. You take text and then you translate it from the original text to the target language and back again. And I was like, I've never tried it yet. I haven't, because evidently if I knew the Braille code for the language, then I would do it. But I just never used it. He actually said there is an audio component to that, but I haven't looked at it.
Right. Yeah. Well, the point I was going to get at is here's what I would suggest you do if you're going to sit there and listen to these programs: is write out something in your own invented pinyin, and sort of keep in mind what it is that David suggests, and then you'll never be in mush territory again because you'll have a written record of what it was that you encountered, and then make mnemonics out of everything, and then go back and listen. You don't do any mindless repetition without creative interaction. And so, when I first started with Chinese, that is one of the things that I did, and it was just a shock to me to hear him speak down so forcefully about memory techniques when, first of all, he is teaching memory techniques, and second of all, it's just the most obvious thing in the world to do if you're going to use that kind of approach. So that's really, really important. So,
okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helps, and keep us updated on how it works, and just you don't have to have any word turn into mush at all. The border blur problem is one that people accept and tolerate, but they don't have to.
Well, I think maybe too because I just picked up Korean like Friday night.
Right.
So it was the first time that I had ever heard it.
Yeah, I just picked up Korean last Friday.
Yeah, like literally. I was like, because Ollie Richards he did the Michelle Thomas Korean, and he said that he was there for more than 4 hours a night.
Right.
They were recording the whole thing, and someone asked him, how did he deal with his brain not turning to mush? Because of all the time that they had to record that whole, because they're recording the whole entire thing, and you're going to have them make mistakes, and He actually said he did refer to some of his Japanese because of, and then he had to explain why he did that. And he made a little documentary. They let him make a documentary of his experience, and he's going to put it up there eventually.
Right.
But I said, because we have Koreans here in Akron, and we have like a big Asian population, and right now I'm into the whole Cantonese, Thai, Korean thing because I study film. So I'm watching movies and documentaries with English subtitles, and I'm getting into that whole semantic. And I'm like, I want to be able to say something. I don't care what it is.
Well, just start saying stuff.
Right.
If you're really serious about Korean, get on italki or italki, however you prefer to say it, and get speaking with somebody right away. There's no substitute for that, and no amount of documentaries are going to get you in there. Anyway, it all sounds exciting and sounds like you know a lot of what you're doing, and so look forward to an update on that. And call again on our next show if you have more questions.
Muchas gracias para ti ayudarme.
Oh yeah, well.
Conmigo problema. Esta noche aquí en los Estados Unidos, los compadres en Australia.
Yeah, muchas gracias. Cool. All right.
Okay, nada.
All right. Well, see you soon. Hasta pronto. Ciao. Well, that was fun. So it works. And Crone Woman Walking says that we could hear, well, thank you so much for calling Chanel. And that number is there if anybody else wants to call as we talk about how to become a memory master. That was very exciting and fun. So Kyle was here. He says, hello, Anthony. Do you have any advice to learning early in the morning? I have class at 6 a.m. and always feel it takes a while for my brain to warm up. Kyle, great question. I used to love class early in the morning. I never had class at 6 a.m., but I had class at 8 a.m., and that obviously is a little better than 6 a.m. But yeah, I mean, first of all, go to bed earlier. That's a challenge for a lot of people, but myself, I'm usually in bed sleeping by 7:30 p.m. It's just very, very regular, and then I'm up usually 3:34, and so 6 a.m. would be nothing. But why why getting up so early works for me is because I go to bed so early. So that's the number one thing. Now, in terms of actually learning and waking up your brain, here's what I do. Well, first of all, let's see if we can get some activity here in the chat. Who would like to know what I do in the morning and have a demonstration of the morning routine that wakes up my brain the fastest? Like, you really got to get it going. Let me know in the chat. Let's see if we can get some people alive and awake. I will show you exactly what I do. There are 4 very, very special brain waking up sequences, a chain, and I have to actually demonstrate it for you. And it will wake your brain up lickety-split. So let's see. Carlos is here, and Sean says, let's hear the routine. All right. Thank you for joining us from Facebook, Sean. If you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and we'll carry on a bit and see if people want to know this routine. Otherwise, we can pop it into the masterclass. So Cronenwagen says, you wear those eye covers. I know that. LOL, you repeat Chinese. No, I don't know what you mean by eye covers, unless I'm not understanding and I repeat Chinese. Well, definitely there's some Chinese, but there's actually something that I don't believe I've ever shared before that it really helps wake up my brain. So let's see if people are interested and excited. Pop in the chat. So Kyle says it's routine, or it sounds interesting. Roland wants to know the routine. All right. Or sorry, Ronald. Sorry, misread that. Carlos would like to know how to memorize the Bible. All right, let's get into the Bible. Here we go. You take your hands like this, and you have your fingers pointing like this, and you go like this. I like to do this sitting cross-legged on the floor. There's some stuff that I do before this, but this is really, really important. And you put your hands out like this, and you go like this. I won't do it as long as I would do it, but 10 to 30 times. I'm already feeling like 5 times more awake than what I did. Now, is it important that you do this pointing in? I have no idea. I saw some guy doing it, and I just thought, That's awesome. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually press in between the fingers here in a kind of wave as I go along. And the reason why I'd like to do that is because it kind of even takes your brain out of thinking about the breathing. So that's the first. Then what I do is I clasp my hands like this and I go as many times as I like. Then, like this. And then like this. Now, after that's all done, your brain is just ready to go. And I'm ready to chant. And then I'll chant from memory. Not chanting mindless stuff, but I will chant the Ripu Gita and a bit of the Bhagavad and as much as I've got now of the Upadesa Saram. And it gets longer and longer and longer. And then I'll just sit and do silent meditation and so forth. This is after a couple of things. This breathing alone, already, I just did this. Do this now if it's safe for you, if you're not driving. It really, really, really wakes up the brain. Sean says, what just happened? Find out. It's amazing. Now, here's what's very, very important about this, is that the more you do it over time, the more the effect will accumulate. I don't know why that is. At least that's what I've observed. Now, I do a lot of other breathing routines. There's alternate nostril breathing, and there's just general breath withholding. There's breath linked to certain mental exercises, etc. But that's the main thing to wake up your brain. Now, in terms of studying, I do studying pretty much every morning, and that really helps me just be focused, be in the moment, and it's the number one thing to wake up. So I don't actually have that many issues waking up, but it's just that extra thing that gives it a good push. Carlos asks, can the breath be through the nose? I have never actually tried. Yeah, you could. I think due to the nature of the pattern, you would want to exhale through the mouth, but you could practice. By the way, interesting thing, especially in the world of memory training, any question that starts with can means just try it. See what happens. That's the only answer there is. Now, let's see. The whole point, though, of all this is that you want to really, really have a study plan. And we're going to talk about that as being part of becoming a memory master for sure. Everything about learning better in the morning is not just like, hey, I'm going to do some random acts of learning. It's like, what are you going to learn? And how much time are you going to spend on it? And what do you want the outcome to be? The clearer you are about that, the more you're going to get out of that actual thing, and the more you're going to be attuned to it by the time you get there. So you can preface your mornings by having the plan figured out for yourself the night before. All right. So let me know if you have any more questions. Feel free to dial that number if you want to talk, as we just had a great conversation. Really appreciate that, and would love for you to join us. Thank you for helping test Chanel. That was a lot of fun. And let's see here. Really, if you're going to become a memory master, you got to learn the techniques. And here's one of the problems, is that people sometimes do not learn the techniques properly. They get an idea of them, and they say they understand them, and they're filled with all kinds of questions, but they are not actually using them. These questions are not so much learned as they are experienced. You learn them through experience. And then there are multiple angles. There are many, many different kinds of techniques. And what you want to do is you want to have a kind of matrix or grid of techniques that you understand from different teachers and different books and different courses and so forth. But here's the thing, and this is a real problem in the world. People don't finish books. They don't finish courses. So they do not know the techniques from multiple angles in depth. So in the link below this video, there's a description, a link to a video on how to complete a memory course. It's very, very important. It will teach you everything. I don't just like make that stuff up. I actually do it. So the instructions are there. This is a video course I'm taking right now using the very same technique. And it's just amazing because you remember so much more. And it helps you complete the course from beginning to end, organize the knowledge, and have it in depth. Because if you don't complete courses from beginning to end in depth, you're not going to be able to implement and you're not going to be able to practice because you won't have the big bird's eye view. This is just the number one way to undercut your success is to not know what you're doing or how you're doing it. And you've just got to know this stuff in depth. So I show a question of memory, read it from beginning to end, every page. You will miss stuff. You will miss stuff. Read it again. Read it again. It's very, very important. And then actually implement what's in there. So a book like this comes with many, many exercises. And here's what's so important in my own journey here, always trying to become and being what I want to become through actual practice, because memory is a behavior, not a thing, as Berglas points out in this excellent book. You got to actually be so involved in the process and implement what is actually there. So what's cool about Berglas is that he's a magician, right? So he's used to following the steps, because when you get a book of magic, it's like, well, you got to shuffle this way, you've got to shuffle that way, you've got to have your fingers here, etc., etc. If you don't understand and then follow the steps, you're not going to actually be able to execute the moves. You're not going to be able to replicate what the teacher is talking about. You're not going to be able to implement. You're not going to be able to practice. So what happens even to me is I go, well, I know all this stuff, yada, 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 so I don't need to do this exercise. But I stop myself and then I go and do the exercise. And that's really important, because then you discover, oh, I didn't know so much as I thought, right? Because there's a reason that person's putting that exercise together the way that they put it together. And you're going to tap into their experience because you're going to do the exercise the way they would like you to do it. Very, very important. That's how you get the multiple angles. And that's how you get it in depth. So if you don't know the whole bird's eye view of the training, of the course, you're skimming, 2 times speeding, yada, 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 good luck. You're going to miss so much. You need to have the bird's eye view, and then you got to implement and practice. Do the actual exercises. You'll learn so much more. All right, so that's the first thing, right? And we're going to talk about practice on our next slidey slide, but let's check in with our chat. Maricella is here, says, I was checking where to do exercises, but I do not choose the place yet. I feel pretty relaxing after I practice with the nostrils. Excellent. Well, by all means, please do find a place, and just dive in and try different places rather than settle on one place or I've finally found the place. Just keep trying multiple places. And the thing with breathing, right? Like, you're going to look pretty stupid if you're in the street going, people think, oh my God, I'm going to have to rescue this person and do CPR or whatever. But you could do all kinds of other breathing exercises that are completely invisible, such as alternate nostril breathing and so on. So very, very important. It's not so much the place, but the places. Chromo Moroccan asks, how do I get over FOF, fear of French? Well, we're going to talk about fear in a little bit here, but you say, I learned to speak a few words, then I stop. Making memory palaces for French seems overwhelming at times. Well, the first thing I would do is like, what's the nature of your fear? I mean, what is that nature of fear? Is French like a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex that is behind you and going to snap you up and break every bone in your body and, decapitate your head and so forth? Is it? Probably not. So what is it that you're afraid of French? Really dial down into it. And we're going to talk again about fear later on today. And the FOS, which is very, very important. So we'll get to that. But generally, what is the fear? What is this fear? Like, you say LOL, and there's usually truth in the joke. So what is the truth of that fear? What is the worst that could happen? What is the worst thing that French could do for you? And then in terms of overwhelm, well, as I've long taught, breathing exercises like what I just demonstrated is a great way to get overwhelm out of your life. You don't have to be overwhelmed. Just breathe through it. Women give birth to babies so far. Maybe in the future, other genders will give birth to babies. I don't know. Maybe they already are. I don't know. Maybe life has become a David Cronenberg movie, which it seems to have had. When you look at the status quo of today. But they just teach them, breathe, right? It's the same thing. Making memory palaces is not really giving birth, but it can maybe feel that way. But you've just got to breathe, use your breath. And, here's another tip for you, Crone Woman Walking, because I know you're into this stuff and you know a little bit about like the non-dual tradition and Advaita Vedanta and so forth. Just say, to whom is this overwhelm happening? Who is it happening to, really? Which of you? Which of the many minds that you go through in each and every day is it happening to you? And then you've got to think, like, when we're becoming a memory master, what is it that we're really mastering? The memory techniques are trivial. They're easy. They're fun. Anybody can do them. 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds can do them, right? It's not about the memory techniques. It's about the ego. It's about all kinds of stories we start telling ourselves about how I'm being hard, and then the world's tiniest little violin comes out and plays a little song just for you. Like, you know the whole story, right? Who is it happening to? And this, like, the self-inquiry is a powerful tool for everything that comes up in life. Everything, really. I haven't seen anything that it can't work for, because you dissolve that positionality, so to speak. The person who thinks it's fearful, the person who thinks it's overwhelming, well, where is that person? To whom exactly is it overwhelming? Oh, it's that voice. Yeah, it's not even real. It's just some little mechanistic blah, 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 blah that's coming up. And we'll have some more blah, blah, blah coming up as one of the major memory master tips in a minute. But yeah, you've just got to ask, to whom is this problem even happening? Nope. No one here. Lights on, nobody home. That's enlightenment in a nutshell. Lights on, nobody home. All right, Crone Woman Walking says that I won't get good at it. Now that I say it, I sound a little nutty. Yeah, I mean, it'd be very hard not to get good at French if you just dive in and learn it. But, it's understandable. It's understandable. If I look at the things that I'm studying, look, memorizing massive amounts of text like I'm doing now, when I first looked at it, it's like, how many pages am I tackling here? It's done now, right? But when I looked at it, this little voice says, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter who you are, unless you don't have voices in your mind, which, is a pretty rare cat indeed. It's going to happen. It happens. Mastery is being able to proceed anyway. And you're right. Like, it does sound a little nutty that, one would be afraid of French or overwhelmed by memory palaces. But the reality is that it happens to everybody. There's so many actors who will tell you they still get nervous going on stage. What is mastery over the art of acting? It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Maricella says, I'm behind in reading. And not only that, but not only masterclass and super learner, but more Neotech, magic, response. Yeah, well, look, Maricella, everybody who has that much on their plate is going to get behind. It's not that you're behind. It's that the person you engage in and allow to put so many things into play is the person who's behind, right? If you would just complete one and then complete the next one and then the next one, you wouldn't be behind at all. It's just pick your battle. This is the number one thing that distinguishes the masters from the people who have no mastery, is completing one thing thoroughly, in depth, and then implementing and practicing what's there. So you have to think about your hierarchy and then just focus. Is it difficult? Well, yes and no. It depends on how much your ego is in the world. Because there's the I want. This is the Faust problem. So many people have the Faust problem. I don't know enough about you, Maricella, but it sounds like the Faust problem. I know, because I had the Faust problem for years. Oh, I want this and I want to do that, and nothing's getting done. Nothing's getting done. Now, fortunately, I was in a university program that helps you be that way, interdisciplinary in nature, and it's like, yeah, we'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and so I was still able to get everything piled higher and deeper, if you know what I mean. But the reality is that you become a jack of all trades and a master of none, and that's okay. There's a place in the world for that, but at the end of the day, what's a lot better, and fortunately I was able to also do this in my university studies, is to depth of something. So if, this is one of the reasons why they have requirements that you do these field exams. They make sure that the field exams are a core unit that enable you to be tested, that you actually can demonstrate some skills in that area. And if you've got all those courses on your plate, you've got to just take one of them. You got to make sure you go through from beginning to end, and you got to make sure you do what is said in those courses, and then move on to the next one after you've gotten results from the first one. This is the path to mastery. There's no two ways about it. There's thousands of years of schools that have had levels and belts and yada, yada, yada. And we are now in a moment of history where there's just this explosion of millions and millions of teachings, right? But the rules haven't changed, that you need to have some sort of progress that is thorough and complete and moves one step at a time through a single thing and then applying that single thing. So even though I always encourage everybody to have multiple memory teachers, listen to this guy, listen to that person, study that book, etc., at the same time, you've got to pay the piper and actually stick with one thing so that you can unlock the value of all those other things. It doesn't matter if you, like people say, I've got every course and I got every book. Big deal. Who cares what you've got? It's what you went through from beginning to end and actually completed. That's what matters. So, someone was saying, when's your Bruno First review coming? And it's like, well, when I finish going through all the exercises, because it would be useless to actually go through it. And he's got a lot of them. So, we're getting closer. But, I'm not going to be able to say I know Bruno First until that I've actually gone through and been able to do that. And it's worth it. It's worth it. It's great. Same thing with this. I didn't really talk about this book or mention it much until that I actually finished what is being taught there. It's very, very important. You need to do it too. Everybody does. And it's just a best practice. Marichelle says, I told you before I have too much to read. I am feeling happy, but I have too much to do. This is the reason. I take breaks and go places, beach parks. Look, don't punish yourself, but just pay the piper. If that's what you're going to do, take breaks and come back to things, great. Then pay the consequences. There's no problem in that. The reality is, though, when it comes to something like a skill, like memory training, you don't take breaks. Memory masters don't take breaks. They don't. They train every day. They use their memory every day. They continue to study the tradition every day, and they do something to add to their Memory Palace network every day or to memorize something new every day. There are no breaks. You don't need breaks because you're never going to take a break from your memory anyway, right? So please understand that, at least in terms of what we're talking about today, which is how to become a memory master. So if you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, how things are going, and you'll notice there's a number there on the screen if you want to dial that. We're doing a live-in call show, and was very delighted to speak with Chanel earlier. So if you missed that and want to hear what her question was about using memory techniques for Korean, I think we helped her out, and we'll have an update from her in the near future, I'm sure. All right, so let's carry on and talk about what is practice exactly. This need that we have to practice. Well, we've got to have practice that scales, to invent yet another new acronym for the magnetic memory method. So that means we got to have our practice scheduled. We got to have it consistent. Then we got to analyze our practice. We got to leverage our practice, and then we got to explain our practice. So scheduled. Kyle was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here. He's asking about studying at 6 a.m. I think he mentioned. So that's scheduled. Great. So if you've got to schedule it, or if you've got a schedule already, fantastic. If you don't, schedule it. So every morning before any device goes on, that's when my memory training is scheduled. It doesn't mean that I do it every time just jumping out of bed, but I just don't engage in anything to do with work or anything like that until after the memory practice is done. What is the memory practice? Well, it's typically something memorized from my current project, which is the Upadesa Saram as represented here. And it's really great. But I also need to recite everything that I've already memorized, and that's great memory practice. And I continue to challenge it. And to do it consistently is the key, because you learn so much through consistency, but you get the benefits from consistency. And how you get consistent is through scheduling your consistency, right? And also there's another component to consistency, which is that you need to You need to actually consistently challenge yourself, consistently grow the challenge, but not to the point of frustration, right? Because if you frustrate yourself, then you're just going to give up. And that's not good. And that's part of why, someone would have very, very slow progress, perhaps, is they tend to put so many things on their plate that they break themselves, and that challenge is just too much. It's not even a challenge anymore. It's just pure frustration, which is no good at all. All right, so very, very important that your practice is scheduled, it's consistent, it's analyzed, leveraged, and explained. What do I mean by analyzed? Well, you got to keep track of what it is that you're doing. How many cards did you memorize? Where are you in your long memorization project? Like, everybody should be memorizing something verbatim, some long piece. Where are you? What did you do? So forth. What imagery did you create? Any observations you have, and so on. That's all got to be recorded so you can analyze it, so you can find ways to improve. And also just encourage yourself. One of the things about being consistent and really constantly feeling motivated is that when you have it recorded and analyzed, then you have this track record. You can look back through your journal and be like, flip through the pages and go, wow, I have not broken the chain. I haven't broken the chain since I got this new snapshot journal. And it's just like, feels good just to look at that absolute record of consistency. So this is why daily journaling, memory journaling is so important. It creates your own portrait of consistency, and it's very, very important. Now, leveraged, of course, means that you're going to be memorizing and practicing with information that actually is useful to you, right? So the one exception to that rule is playing cards, but it's not that much of an exception, because playing cards, when you've memorized them, actually become a memory tool. So your 00 to 99, 52 of which are playing cards, then become things you can use. So it's good to be practiced with them, and you can leverage that in your day-to-day practice. But generally, you would want to have material memorized every day in your practice that you can leverage towards a goal. So passing an exam, learning more about a tradition or whatever, having more profound meditation tools, learning a language, whatever it is, right? So practice with information that you can leverage towards a goal and leverage daily. So, language learning is an obvious one, where every day you're memorizing something new, but not just some random thing from the language. That won't give you any leverage. It's something that you actually need, that you can use because you actually need it. That's where consistency and journaling for analysis become very, very powerful, because you can keep track in your journal of, well, I had this situation where I wish that I could have been able to say X, and then you look back on, oh, I didn't learn that yet, so my journal is now telling me what next to learn. And then you go and learn that, you memorize it, now you leverage it in your language learning practice. And this would be true of other things, where you're reading a book, maybe you're a lawyer or you're at law school and you're like, oh, I don't know that term. Keep track of the terms you don't know. You go and memorize it. Now your memory practice gives you something that can be leveraged towards accomplishing a goal. And then explained is, obviously you've got to use the big five, and you've got to summarize things, but also just tell other people. Get it through your mouth. Like Chanel, when she called earlier today, she was explaining where she was with her progress, how things were going with this particular app that she's using, etc. And that explanation, and she's actually very good at explaining things in multiple ways in many contexts and scenarios. So, sometimes she does these lives that I've seen, and she's explaining all the time what she's learning with her languages, and consistently. It's very, very amazing what she does. So you might catch that on the internet somewhere. All right. So let's carry on here. And, obviously people want to know, well, what info to practice with if you don't have something that you need to leverage? Well, the first thing, if you don't have the ability to memorize names, that's what you want to work on memorizing. Names. If you don't know every name in your company, every name in your family, every name of, the authors that you like, or the musicians in bands or actors, just work with those. That'll help give you the skill to memorize the names of the new people that you meet. And then the next thing would be vocabulary, numbers, facts, ultimately any information that improves your life, which goes back to the point about leverage. Very, very important. So everybody has something to practice with that actually will make a difference. And names would be at the top of that pile. And obviously you could let me know if there's something I'm missing there. But, numbers would include formulas, etc. And whatever it is that you need to accomplish is... whoa. That is not our special number here. That's some other number with no caller ID, so we won't be answering that. Oh, apps. Normally I don't have phones around me, but I wanted to do that for today's special conversation. Apologies for that interruption. Scared me. And they're not going away, but they're probably going to leave a message. But the call that I will answer is the one on that screen right there, if anybody wants to take advantage of that and have a chat. A little bit of an experiment to see if you all want to do that, and go ahead and make use of that. But everybody has information to practice with. There's no excuses there. If you want to become a memory master, definitely make sure you're good with names, vocabulary, numbers, and so on. Now, all of this is going to require some planning. So the question is, how are you going to plan? Well, one of the things that you're going to do is, you need to assess your life. If you don't know already what it is that you need to do, if it isn't glaringly obvious what to memorize and how to memorize it and so on, then you've got to, do some life assessment. There's a lot of life assessment tools. Like, for example, there is these pie charts where people will spend a bit of time analyzing their family life, their economic life, their free time life, their contribution life, etc. Maybe you have a little wedge there for your memory life, hopefully. And that sort of pie chart life assessment can be good. You can do like the 5-year plan, you can do 3-year plan, etc., etc. Really, at the end of the day, all right, hello, you are live with us on the call. How are you doing there?
Dr. Anthony, it's Crone Woman Walking.
Wow, good to hear your voice.
Yeah.
I've actually heard it before because I know your YouTube channel.
Yes, I'm just calling to thank you for what you said before.
Oh, well.
Because I was just thinking about it, and it just left me speechless when I actually thought about it. And it's just amazing the knowledge that you're dispensing for free, I would add, over the YouTube.
Well, yes, but you know that's a mistaken use of the word free, because none of this is free, right? Everything costs energy,
no, it's not
attention.
Really free, yeah.
The strangest thing in the world is you can blast the truth, and it will remain hidden the louder that you shout it. Which is what that opening image was. I don't know if you were there at the very beginning, but someone had posted asked me how to become a memory master, and their most recent post on Facebook was of a person in the gym exercising. And it's just like, how do you not know the answer to this?
Yes, agreed.
Right. And, I don't want to point my finger at anybody, because it happens in many ways in my own life as well, with other, topics and so forth, which, we can get into what that is at some other time. But, the reality is we all have these blind spots where the answer is so obvious, right? And that's why community is so important, because we can point out to each other our blind spots.
Well, I think if I may offer my opinion on that question, I think what some people, including myself, really are asking is how to become a memory master. How do I overcome myself to be a memory master? But believing that other people can do it, and other people are geniuses or bright students, but we are not. And I know a lot of people who know a lot of different languages,
And I read about the greats. Like right now, I'm obsessed with Oppenheimer, and he knew many languages.
Right.
And I'm struggling to get myself to learn French. And I'm excited when I can read something in French, but then I stop and I get discouraged. So that's what I feel like if I can figure that out, that I would have no problem learning any amount of languages, and practice. Not that I'm making excuses, but it's hard in the United States enough because it's such a monoculture language-wise, and where I live, it's a very small town in rural America, and there's not much. There's no foreign language going on. I'll be honest with you. My husband knows French, and sometimes I feel like really a little small-minded when he starts speaking French, and then I don't want to speak any. So that's what I'm dealing with right now.
Right. Well, I mean, there's some things that come to mind in just what you've said, if you want me to expound.
Go ahead, expound, please.
Right. Well, Oppenheimer's dead, right? And
yes.
you can't actually verify how well that he knew that language, or even ask him what his journey was like to learning that language.
Right.
Or any of the languages, right? So
yes.
I don't know that you're doing this, but a lot of people do, and certainly in other areas, I have to stop myself from doing that, which is to build a portrait that's unrealistic of the ease that another person went through, right? And
yes.
This is not, even if you could get into their head to see it, it's not only unlikely that it was as easy for them as it seems, but even if it were, so what? They're them and you're you, right? So that's like the sort of the first thing that I would point out, if that is really a bigger problem than you just sort of passively mentioning it. But you're right. A lot of people do that. They look at all the polyglots and so forth, and they make pictures of the polyglots in their heads that just isn't accurate. I know lots of polyglots, and look, at some of the polyglot conventions, you get a range. There are people who are like just absolute snobs about the amount of language that they've learned, and then there are people who are just very gracious. But there are people who will just say, look, I can't speak a word of this language, but I can read it and write it. And there are other people who are there calling themselves polyglots who just have all the bells in some app, and they can't speak, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then the real deal people, they're probably all like A1, or it depends on their language, right? I don't want to generalize, but there's a lot of illusions that people build in their heads that just doesn't reflect the reality. And I've seen some of the most highly regarded polyglots speak in some of their languages, and there's two ways to approach it. To just be like, oh, I'm utterly destroyed because my fantasy image of their glowing skills in a language I know just got shattered, or be like, that's actually quite an accomplishment because I remember how it was like to learn that language too, right? So it's you're just you, and they are them, and we can't really even know anything about their journey or the work that they put into it. All I know is that the real deal people, they don't get it for free. Nobody gets it for free. There is no free. None whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it then? Well, part of it, I believe, is time spent, attention paid, and consistency against all the odds. And maybe in some cases, there's a little bit of oomph that they have that is an X factor, right? But I don't think their X factor ever eliminates the need for time and focus and energy and consistency. It's not even possible.
Right.
So
I think I agree.
And I think when we think of all kinds of people who are talented in multiple ways, it's fairly rare that they're known for that variety of talents. So you're telling me Oppenheimer has a number of languages he spoke. I've never even heard that about him before in my life, right? There's other things that I know him for, and that's not one of them. This is just totally new to me.
Yes, so. And he liked to walk too, and I like to walk.
Right.
But and I find myself that not even only him, but there are other people in history, living and not living, that I idolize. But I think you're onto something, because the idolization in the past hasn't helped me. I think now that I journal and do things for myself, looking at the success routines of great people like that, it's starting to do something for me. But it only happens if I do it for myself.
Right.
So I think you're onto something. I think all idolization I've done in the past really hasn't served me. I've always been admirable of people who learn different languages, and feel a little, strange for knowing some Spanish, and then English is my main language, and I feel like I should know at least 3 or 4 to be considered intelligent. So. Right. That might not make sense, but I always viewed multilingual ability as a marker of intelligence. That and learning to play chess. So,
yeah. I'm not
yeah.
sure that it is. There's certainly something to it, and there's some research that suggests that there may be something to that. However, here's the problem. If knowing multiple languages was some sort of sign of intelligence or whatever, then so many European countries would just be solving the world's problems like crazy, right? But they're not, right? In fact, there's arguments to be made, and the world is ripping itself apart right now, because half of the people making the argument is that Europe is self-imploding, destructing right now, because all these multilingual geniuses,
Right.
Yeah, no, they don't have any more intelligence than anybody else. I guess my question for you would be is how do you even define intelligence? What's the marker here of intelligence?
Well, I used to know I used to have a definition of intelligence in general,
mm-hmm.
but I feel like my own personal definition for me is to know math and science and have a good memory and know different languages and know how to play chess and things like that. The goalpost moves every year, and I always find more and more things to add to that list. So
right. Yeah, I don't find it. I mean, personally, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I personally don't find any of those things markers of intelligence. What I find a marker of intelligence is that person as free from suffering as possible? Is that person calm, relaxed, and enjoying the ride? And does that person show kindness and respect to others? Because if they don't, I don't care how much intelligence they have. You can have the highest. Look, I deal with a lot of people. They email me. They tell me about their IQ scores, et cetera, et cetera. I don't care I don't care if your IQ is 2005. What have you done today to contribute to society? And how do you feel about it?
I agree with that. And speaking on the point of IQ, my husband has a very high IQ, and mine's pretty above average. And one day I said to him, we were talking about IQ and bell curve and all these things, and I said to him, we're just right out of idiocracy. We really haven't done much with our IQs, and we haven't had any kids, so how intelligent are
we? IQ is something that humans invented in order to solve particular problems. And those that metric is an absolute trap. It's a poison out of context, right? And even in the context that it was designed for, it's still a poison. Who cares what number you have? It's the same thing with I can tell you all my grades. I got A+, etc. in university, blah, blah, blah. What would any of that matter at all. And I got a D plus also in one course. Why did I get the D plus? Well, because I was intelligent. I told that professor what I thought about him, and I didn't go to his class, and I don't regret it 1 minute, even though I had to go and explain that D plus when I wanted to get into grad school, and they wanted me, some special reason why that, I should have such a black mark. And I said, you're the one who hired the guy, not me, but I would say that my grades have nothing to do with my intelligence. It's really just how one conducts oneself on a daily level. And do they have goals, and are they achieving their goals? That's real intelligence. Being able to set goals and accomplish them.
I love your definition. we need to go with your definition of intelligence.
I always appreciate how you help with the mission, and really great to speak. And the more that we can get together, the more we can set better goals, and actually goals that can be accomplished, because that's part of the wisdom of setting goals is, can you actually accomplish it? Because if you don't base it on something you actually can do, then you're setting yourself up to fail, which is not particularly intelligent.
Right.
So when it comes to...
Thank you. Yes, I love this definition. I think this is something we should talk about more often, because I think it's a bigger problem than people realize. Is like people don't think of themselves as smart and intelligent, and I think it's something that goes really deep in a lot of people's background and childhood. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I grew up with a mother who always thought of herself as stupid because she never got a formal education. She went to freshman year of high school, well, whatever it would be in the English school system back in the day, and that's what I grew up with. So, and I think a lot of people grew up that way.
Well, it's a shame, and it's part of what we need to do is, just recognize the generational influence and put it in its place and then move on. My dad, he finished, I don't even think he finished grade 3, to tell you the truth, but he's one of the smartest people that I've ever known. And not like, okay, I don't want to get into long stories about my dad, but unbelievable what his life was like. He was one of these babies that was put on a doorstep, essentially, rang the bell and was gone.
Wow.
And whatever school, like even to call it a school is wrong, because it was like an orphanage place I actually was able to visit this place in Quebec, and just absolutely beautiful, but hell at the same time. So it was, being taught by the nuns and so forth. And really, by age 9, he was out of school, and he was a blacksmith pounding hot metal at age 9. So only in Quebec. But the thing is what makes him so incredibly intelligent and so wise is not what he learned in school, but it's what he knows about life. And two things that always stuck with me. One is sort of like an absurdist thing. I don't know what it means, but it means something in my heart and my soul. Is he always used to say, you just got to learn how to fly right. He always said that. It was like a David Lynch movie or something. David Lynch movies where like this guy says, I'm the cowboy or whatever. And it might be that you do this, but it might be you do that. And like just this mysterious thing that appears out of nowhere. But the other thing that he said, and I don't normally swear on my shows, but I think it's worth it on this occasion. And this is the absolute marker of intelligence. And he demonstrated this so many times in his life. He always told me again and again and again, shit or get off the pot, which,
Yeah.
So, when I get an email from my dad, it's usually like, hey, I just finished building this car and I just sold it for X amount of dollars. And this is the most amazing car you've ever seen. And, he goes through the magazines where you can buy 1946 blah, blah, blah car or whatever that's been gutted and sitting in a field rusting to hell. And he buys it. He then puts it on blocks in his garage, and he just works piece by piece until that looks like brand new, and he sells it. That's setting a goal you can actually accomplish, and that's, doing it. So it's just amazing.
Good.
Grade 3.
Well, thank you for these
Well, yeah, thank you for calling, and I hope more people will call and make use of it, because you know how it goes, and you know my sort of thing is if people aren't using it, then I generally stop doing it. But feel free to call again. And in terms of setting goals that you can accomplish, look, I understand what it's like to be in a place where there's not many people around. I spent some years in a little town in Canada called Salmon Arm, of all names. I used to joke and call it Fish Appendage instead of Salmon Arm because it sounds more interesting. But in any case, there's not a heck of a lot of people around. But what I used to do back then is I would mail to other people around the world. And in this case, I wanted to publish. I was a teenager. I didn't have any opportunity to publish, but I found out about zines. Turns out there's directories. There's no internet as such that you could get onto, that I could get onto anyway, because computers were things that were only at the library, and dial-up took 45 years or whatever. But I just found out that there were people around the world, so I photocopied my writing and sent it to them, and then they sent me their writing back. And so now we have the internet. There's a site called italki.com, or italki.com, some people pronounce it, Italki. You can just go up on there. You can find French people to speak with like crazy. They're all over the place. So you could set a simple goal. You could just once a week speak with someone through that site. There's Hello Talk, which is an app on an iPhone. You know, you can just get on there and put French in, and through this phone you can leave messages to people who speak French, and then they speak back. So you can trade for free English for French through your phone for nothing, for free. But it's not free. You got to put in the time, the energy, the effort, and the consistency. But you have thousands of people to speak French with every single day, all day long.
Okay.
So
I will do that.
Those two services, you know, you can make a goal to explore them and try them both, see what you like, and
right.
And it'll be amazing. And there's no stress in it. Like when I do Chinese, I'm just like blah 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 in Chinese, and then who cares? It's just some person in China, you know. Like I don't have to be embarrassed about it or whatever. And then they get back and they're like, well, I understood what you said, but you know, this tone or whatever, and they help correct it. Or maybe they don't. Maybe I don't hear back from them. It's hit or miss, right? You just like keep talking. Just keep talking, and then people will talk back.
Well, maybe that's what I do that. I'm gonna try that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the call, and look forward to speaking with you again. Great. Okay. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Well, that was fun. I love to put a voice, even though in this case I've heard her voice before on her great YouTube channel. So click on Crone Woman Walk-In if you want to check out her channel. So I've heard her voice before, but now there's a difference actually. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who are quite famous on the internet, and there's a difference when you're hearing their voice and then you actually meet with them or speak with them. It's quite different. All right. So Dua says, if anyone wants something cool and obscure to learn these, there's Morse code. I found an app simply called Morse code, and I got it almost too easily. I'm super fast, I guess, but I got it to my satisfaction. That's awesome, Dua. Yeah, I'm rereading Seven Eves right now, and there's a Morse code scene in there. Awesome. Thank you for that. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and if you want, give me a call, as Crone Woman Walking just did. And maybe we can help you achieve your goals. So specific goals, very, very specific ones, as we were just talking about, they need to actually be built on something you actually can do, not something you fantasize that you can do or that you fantasy want to do. What can you actually do? And so in memory training, there are so many things that you can actually do, and I just don't buy for a second that anybody can't. And part of the mastery, as Crone Woman Walking pointed out, is the mastery over yourself and over your objections. Thank you so much again. That was awesome, and I really appreciate it. So anybody wants to call, that's the number 1-508-263-0530, and that's a lot of fun. Okay. I'll pop that in the chat too. I don't know if it's clickable from your phone or not. In any case. Yeah. And look, it's the same thing in my life as it is in anybody's life. You've got to base things on things you can actually achieve. And it's the number one thing I always have to remind myself. So, you know, would I like to have things be way bigger than they are, et cetera, et cetera? Well, sure. But am I going to set some crazy goal that I can't accomplish? No, I just set the ones that I can accomplish. So one of my goals was to try and have a call-in show. Would people call if I put a number on the screen? So I set the goal to figure out how I could do it. And I spent some time thinking about it. Like, what's the easiest way to test this? Yada, yada, yada. Made some notes. And then I just thought, that's all too complicated. What's a simpler way? And so then I made the goal a little simpler. And then I just thought, I could get, even though I don't like apps on my phone, I could just get the Skype app on my phone, buy a phone number, and then it's technologically not so complicated. And there we go. See? It works. Hello, you're live and on the air. This is so much fun. Hello.
Hello. Anthony, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, and I'll try and hold this in such a way that everybody else can hear you. How are you doing? Who are you? What's going on?
Great. I'm doing well. And I am Jason, and I've just watched a few videos this last couple months, I guess. And anyway, I've experienced something recently that really would illustrate your point you just made.
Right.
About intelligence, and I don't know. I mean, I've always considered the approach to be the number one ingredient to learning something, memorizing. And there have been a couple of things I've learned recently that I've given up on before because they baffled me. And recently, I've just had a few minutes here and there, especially in the morning. I'll have a few minutes waiting to go to work or whatever. And I don't know if I'm just sharper in the morning or what, but a lot of it is that I think I will think about my approach to learning something. If I try something and I fail, it sticks in my mind, and there's some kind of a drive that I'll have to go back to it months or even years later. And one of these recently, there's a game called Sudoku, and I had heard of it long ago, but it just seemed like something that smart people would do. One day I was at a dollar store, and I saw a Sudoku book, and I grabbed it and figured, okay, well, let's see what this is about. And my expectations were actually pretty low because I'm like, well, this is a dollar store. I don't know how hard can this be?
Right.
And so I take it home, and for weeks I tried, and like even the first few pages I would be baffled. Like, what is going on here? I understood the concept, and I could explain it to you, but actually solving these puzzles wasn't really happening. I would get a few of them, but I also had a lot of pages that were unfinished. I'd move on to another one and just sort of dig into it. Well, this went on for maybe a few weeks, and I got frustrated thinking that I'm an idiot. It's way over my head.
Right.
But as to the approach for learning something, I found an app just a couple of months ago, an app on Sudoku, so I figured, okay, well, let's jump in again. And like within a few days, it clicked.
Right.
I totally understood it. And it got to the point where in the morning when I had a few minutes, I was digging into it, and it was only within maybe a month that I got so tired of it because I was so predictably handling these puzzles on whatever. I was going to the highest levels I could find. I was like, I mean, there was a lot more work that the app had available for me to do, but it began to seem like a waste of time to keep doing it. So I've now deleted the app because it just like, okay, I get it, I'm done. And so when I did that, I was like, let me think of something. Let's see what seems kind of cool.
Right.
And I used to be into ham radio. And
Right.
I remember thinking like it would probably be way over my head. I don't get it, you know, the
Right.
Huh? That's so cool. How do they do that? What is happening? It seems so remote.
Right. Well, yeah.
And I got an app. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, you were just going to say you got an app, and then I assume you're going to say that the app, then you were consistent enough with it until it clicked and you got it, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And now I'm moving on to Spanish. And, you know, Spanish is tricky for me too because I've spent some time looking for a cool app that has an approach that I like. And I've bounced around at some different videos on YouTube. None of it seems to click. I'm still trying to find my own approach to it.
Right.
I'm still working that out because I know that there's an approach that I need and I'm looking for that. I may have to devise it myself.
Yes. Well, yeah.
I look forward to understanding Spanish too.
You will. And it's precisely that attitude of devising it yourself. There is no book, there's no app, there's only the combination of elements and your search and implementation. And it's just like Sudoku or just, it will be exactly that, because learning Spanish is just a game. That's all it is. It's all just a game. Everything, the things that I want to do on my bass, you know, there's challenges I take on with my bass. It's just a game. The things that I try to, you know, learn how to do on the internet, it's just a game. And you will only get that aha by being in the game. If you stay outside of the game and, oh, I wonder how they do that and yada, 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 you're going to be outside of the game forever. You got to be inside the game.
Yeah, there's something that's going to drive you. And I think some people are lucky enough for all the ingredients to fall into place maybe early, and they click. Maybe that's something about being a child, you know.
Yeah, there's certainly a bit of luck in it. There's a bit of luck, but then there's also just what we were talking about with Crone Woman Walking, intelligence, and what intelligence really is. And intelligence is just saying, look, I know that other people can do this. There must be a way that I can do it too. I'm going to make the plan, and I'm going to stick with it consistently, and I'm going to figure out what this adventure is all about. I understand that I can't replicate what anybody else has done. I can only be the replicator, and away we go. And anything else than that, luck is just part of this. And yes, some people have some luck in certain age, et cetera, but that's not the golden ticket. The golden ticket is to have the wherewithal and the discernment to take action consistently.
Yeah, and you're right. And then something takes hold when you find that you have enough interest in it to devise it yourself. Like, you know, just look at it your own way.
Yeah.
Like with Morse code, I didn't have anybody explaining to me ways to do it, but I sort of with like mental pictures and forming things in a certain way just kind of drove me to just do it, finish it, and it clicked in such a way that it was just ridiculously easy. It was done, and pretty soon, I don't know, like maybe I'll delete that app too. But I think I'll keep it around just so I can kind of keep sharp on it on occasion.
Right.
But it's so incredibly easy. It's just fantastic to learn these things that you never thought you would.
Yeah. It's true. And, you know, basically you're skilling yourself, and that will create something called cognitive reserve. And so you're basically skilling the skill of learning, and that will have application across all kinds of things, not just Spanish, but anything that you want to learn. So it's the old rule. The more you learn, the more you can learn. And it's not just because you have more mental material to make connections with, but you also have in your brain more cognitive reserve. So it's a great investment. And I would recommend as soon as possible deleting the app component, simply because, like my dad used to say, just got to fly right? But birds fly without any sort of apparatus.
So do you think I should delete the app?
Well, I would
Am I
not
hearing it right?
I would not say, yeah, you should or you shouldn't. But as a general principle, if you don't need it, if even a little bit before you don't need it, any sort of external training like that, just move the training into your own program, right? So I don't know, like if you're going to do ham radio,
It's
you can
very
play with an app all
strange.
day, or you can get on
It's
ham
very
and
strange. I don't know what drove me. You know, I'm not a prepper, but it kind of occurred to me that, like, well, if our electrical grids go down and we have no internet, and suddenly all our phones are blank.
yeah. Well, you don't have to be a
What are we
prepper to
gonna
be
do?
prepared.
How are we going to communicate? I mean, I'm just thinking of the chaos. I don't know. I'm not worried. I'm not paranoid about it, but it occurred to me that the only way that people are going to communicate at that point, probably, I mean, within over distances, would
Yeah.
possibly be Morse code. So I don't know. It seems interesting to me enough to try it.
Amazing. Well, it's a good choice. And yeah, anything else you want to add or that I can help you with?
Just that I think your channel is fantastic. I'm enjoying it a lot, and your talking points really get home. That's all.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thanks for being part of it, and thanks for calling up. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Anthony. It's nice to talk to you.
Good. It was Jason, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I got to remember to memorize the names as they come in. So thanks for.
I knew you would, Anthony. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. So that was Jason with some really good situations in terms of being in the game and actually having the aha moments because of being in the game. So it's really, really important. And, like you said, not for reasons of paranoia or worrying about the world coming to an end, but Morse code has this kind of, how would we communicate, right? And since it's a thing that people actually use, well, why not learn it, right? I haven't learned it myself, but it doesn't look like rocket science. And, why not? That's a great specific goal, and it's well within anybody's reach. And then, to the point of getting some assistance from an app, why not? Why not? If it's not, somehow a barrier. For me, my app thing is that it's always a Pandora's box. You download one and then you're like, oh, I wonder if there's a better one. And then the next thing you know, you're in the store. It's got 50,000 different apps, and all of a sudden your phone is filled with apps, right? So part of is my own situation there, and my discipline of not having that happen is also a no app policy. But I do have some apps, and I mentioned some of them, and I play them like a game even though they're not a game. So like Hello Talk, for example. How can I figure out how to have a stream of daily personalized Chinese lessons from actual native speakers from multiple regions of Chinese? There you go. An app can help do that. Now, I can't fly solo from that app as such, except if I start a Chinese speaking group locally and, get a bunch of people and have some sort of rule. Too complicated. So in that case, it's very, very good to use that particular app. But yeah, you got to set specific goals, then you got to dive in. And then the point of let go of the outcome, why this is so important is a lot of people don't focus on the process and what you can learn from the process because they're so concerned about getting an outcome. And it's kind of a paradox. You want an outcome. It's part of setting goals. Why would you set a goal if it wasn't to produce a particular outcome? But at the end of the day, if that goal becomes a barrier to the learning as you go through the process, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So then part of your goal should be the willingness to let go of the outcome. And it can be tricky. It can be difficult. But a key sort of example is what I'm doing with this book, Happiness Beyond Thought, memorizing all the Sanskrit that he recommends. When I first heard about this project, Gary Weber says you can, if you do these things, eliminate thought, right? I just thought, you're kidding me, right? Nonsense. And so how do you actually make good on the claim that this is nonsense? You dive in. You dive in. Now, he's very, very, very clear that you can't reproduce any teacher's method because you're not that person, right? You can use all of the techniques and so forth, but you're never going to do things exactly like the description, because even if the teacher could make a million versions of the description that made sense to every single person in the world, you have to go and do it yourself. And you have to do it without setting up a picture in your mind of the teacher as if you're going to somehow have the same experience. You have to pay attention to the experience that you're having so that you actually can have it and so that you can actually optimize it, right? And to do that, you've got to let go of the outcome. So you got to let go of the teacher, which is something we sort of talked about with Cronin walking. Who cares about Oppenheimer's memory or his language learning abilities, etc.? You've got to just focus on yours. What's yours going to be? And then let go of the outcome. And let go of the outcome is huge as well, because all the people who go to any kind of competition or whatever, you got to have courage to actually know that everybody's going to lose except for the winner, right? And that means that they're good at letting go of the outcome at some level, or they're at least able to not let it bother them, right? So just dive in and set goals you can actually accomplish. But, make sure you're challenged as you go through. All right, so that's what that's all about. And it's part of mastery. If you really want to master something, including the mastery over improving your memory, you've got to be willing to engage in the exercises regardless of whether you get you accomplish the goal. You've just got to go in and experiment. And that's basically, I can use my memory. I know how to memorize stuff. This guy says if I memorize all this Sanskrit and do a couple of other things that I'm going to stop thinking? Nonsense. But I tested it. And I set reasonable goals. So, and I haven't memorized all the Sanskrit yet, but we're over 50 verses now, and it's pretty complicated, especially since I didn't know Sanskrit from the sun when I first got into this. I heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it. And so I just came into it cold, right? And when you read these books, there's all kinds of weird terms and stuff like that. You just got to keep reading, memorize stuff. Then you hit it again and again and again. And then all of a sudden it pops. And then, the other day I was meditating and I was just like, wow, this meditation is profoundly different than any other meditation before. Something switched, some little lever. And it's been that way ever since. Maybe it'll go back. I don't know. But it's the persistence and the consistency and so on. And you just learn more. And then I reread this book and I'm just like, yeah. Now I get that. Like I read it before. I understood it conceptually before. But now I get it from lived experience. And what he's saying is not something that's said in words necessarily, even though it's communicated through words on the page. But now we are fused at the hip through shared experience. And what he was urging me to experience, I go, it's context, right? So you got to go deep into things. Dive in, deep. Define what it is that you're doing. Establish the practice. Do the exercises. And then practice going deep and just make it a circle. Keep going further and further and further. All right, so if you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world in the chat, what you're doing. Mut Maina is here from Indonesia. I'm not sure if I pronounced that even remotely correctly, but thank you for being here. Really appreciate you joining us. If you want to call the number on the screen, that's great. We've had some great calls so far today, and I really am enjoying that. So feel free to have, just chat, whatever it is you want to talk about, questions, comments, etc. And obviously this is very, very powerful. Jason's recommendations from just a few minutes ago are wonderful, that anybody can dive in. And something like that is a great way to proceed towards more complicated tasks. All right, so that was our first point. Now let's get on to the second point. Cultivate self-reliance. Now, I just mentioned the whole recommendation here, don't even try to do exactly what the teacher has done. That's the reproducibility problem. So you've got to be reliant on yourself, and you've got to create the systems for yourself. You've got to create the habits for yourself. You've got to create the routines for yourself, and you've got to let go of the outcome, because you can't reproduce anybody else. You can't reproduce anybody else. You can only be the reproducer. And that means following steps, understanding what it means to follow the steps by going all the way through, and then understanding that this is a virtue. It's a virtue. It's the highest possible virtue to be a self-directed, self-guided, self-studying individual who takes the horse by the reins and rides it. Because the world is like that. It's just this galloping wild horse, and you've got to be able to calm it down. You've got to be able to guide it to the pasture and then keep it well fed so that the next time it goes crazy, it knows you're the master who feeds it and just calms down on its own, right? Like this is what life is all about. You can calm down everything by being in command of yourself, and then that extends over. Oh, it's overwhelming. Well, it'll overwhelm you for a second, but you'll have tools to guide you in organizing everything in a particular way so that it's not so overwhelming. And you get that by learning how to be self-reliant as a person who studies. So any sort of group study, I always tell people, is there to help you help yourself. It's to help you help yourself better than if you're not able to do it on your own. But don't go into group study expecting that somebody's going to do it for you. It's just a more elaborate touch in terms of having more feedback from more people and so forth to push you towards the virtues of self-study. And really, nothing could be more of a demonstration than that of a fitness group, right? So we saw this guy already at the beginning of the thing. Now, he's in a gym. There's lots of people there. At the gym I go to, there's always a fitness group. These people get in. Doesn't matter how many people are in the fitness group. It doesn't matter how many people are in the gym. You are lifting those weights yourself. You are moving the muscles yourself. And the other people there are just there either to reduce the cost of personal training, or they are there to learn from a particular teacher, to learn a particular routine. But no matter what, nobody gets the trainer to lift the muscles for them. It's just not going to happen. It's not possible. You've got to, not lift the muscles, to actually lift the weights, to grow the muscles, or whatever you're doing in that gym. So you've got to become reliant, and you got to create systems. All right, Brundhiver is in the house. Good to see you, Brundhiver. We got a new feature here today, which is we've had some calls, and so if you check the number there on the screen or whatnot, people have been calling in, which is a lot of fun. Good to see you as always. So in group study, like for example, in the mastermind group, we have some great demonstrations of people taking action. And so Adolfo here, I just said, hey, you got to, I had Barbara Oakley on the podcast, and we recently re-released the podcast in the video version. And so, he goes out, buys a Mind for Numbers, and then demonstrates through the group to others. Hey, look, I got this book. This is beautiful. Now, my goal in life is not to sell Barbara Oakley's books, but it is amazing because that helps the larger goal, which is to help people learn better, faster, and to excel. And so he goes and he shares that in the group, which now gives that trickle effect. More people are, okay, now I will go and get it too, or I will read it or whatever. At the library, it's just action begets action. And so the group training element is to have more action. Likewise, Maricela, recently she posts all these wonderful shots. She's creating her memory palaces with a photographic element, sharing them with us, which enables us to constantly be inspired and to look at the world of memory palaces and potential stations through her eyes. But then what's going to trigger us, we're out in the world and we'd be like, oh yeah, that'd be a perfect memory palace station. And, I would personally draw it in my memory journal, but sometimes I will take a snap too if it's particularly interesting. And sometimes I share those pictures here on the YouTube channel with the community tab there. So that's always a lot of fun. But yeah, group training is great, but don't get the illusion that somehow group training is going to do it for you. You still have to do it. All right, let's check in with the chat here. Elder is in the house. Good to see you, Elder. Wonderful, wonderful. Mutmaina says, do you do live video every day and what time? No, I do not do live video every day, and I do not announce the times. Speaking of group training, if you do want to know what time that I'm available, then you'd want to be in the group training, because that's where it's published, as well as the exclusive link to find that. It's not on YouTube, but let me know if you're interested in that by email. All right. So no published schedule, but thank you for being interested in it, and thank you for asking. Brunheimer says, looks very interesting already. Yes, A Mind for Numbers is an incredible book that helped me a lot to start with memory techniques. Awesome. That's good to hear, Brunheimer. All right. So, number 3, create mnemonic examples yourself and do it daily. So there's a big poisonous thing in the world, which is that some companies and corporations and softwares and etc. And books, they create mnemonics for people. And they do it en masse, like entire fat books just filled with mnemonic examples. Really? No, this is not really the way that you help people. What you do is you create them yourself. You learn how to do it. And you don't get what I call mnemonic example addiction. There are people who like get angry at me because they can't hire me to create mnemonic examples for them. Really? Like, you're not following the plot yet. This is about you creating the mnemonic examples, because no one else can. If you really understand what memory techniques are all about, they are you diving into your own mind to figure out what is going to match what. And what use is it for me to be like, okay, well, I'm going to think about Elvis Costello for that, right? You might not know Elvis Costello. You might not have the sound of him in your ears. You might not know a single Elvis Costello album to save your life. So what good is, now all I've done is said, okay, now go spend some time reading the Wikipedia page on Elvis Costello. I recommend you listen to this album and this album and this album, and then that mnemonic example is going to work for you, right? That's garbage. It ain't going to work for anybody. No, instead you learn how to create your own mnemonic examples, and you create them daily. And all the books in the world, they're just it's an intellectual crime is what it is that they do it. Now, does it help some people a little bit? Yeah, temporarily. And I hear this all the time. It helped me for a while, or I memorized some of the characters because this was in that book, but they don't take it up for life. And that's a very, very sad thing indeed. What you want to do is cultivate the skill daily. And if you're struggling to create mnemonic examples, then study art, study creativity, what it really is. What is creativity really? It is not creating things out of nothing. Original means of origin. It's very, very important to understand that. And you understand that in memory techniques, it's not about inventing new images. It's not about anything that's creative in terms of making new stuff. It's quite the opposite. It's just like those mashup artists on YouTube. You know, I saw a great one with Slayer and Casey and the Sunshine Band or something like that today. And it's just like, you know, I'm walking on chemical warfare. Yeah, woo, it feels so good. It's like, oh man, that's amazing. And it's a new creation that comes from the combination of pre-existing elements. That's what mnemonic examples are. Now, of course, there are some details involved in this in terms of what makes a magnetic image magnetic, how, you know, tips and tricks for making them work together better and better and better. But at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. Get out of the idea that you have to visualize anything. Get out of the idea that you have to create anything or be creative, but study what creativity really is. What it really is. It's the recombination of existing elements. Very, very profound. And that's exactly what it is when you're creating mnemonic examples. Sandra is in the house with a dot. Good to see you, Sandra. Thank you for that dot. I love dots. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so hope that's clear. Let me know if you want to chat on the voice, as Jason and Chanel and Chronoman Walking have done today, taking advantage of that number on the screen. I am still here live. Thank you for joining us. If you're here, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing in the chat. Feel free to keep using the chat and ask any questions that you like as we carry on with the fourth thing that we need to become a memory master. So we talked a lot about this already today, but you know, yes, use technology by all means, but with caution. And you know, technology too is use techniques with caution. So technology is not just about apps in phones. It's also about the actual technique. So, you don't want to become so focused on a single thing and somehow, break yourself trying to use it. You also want to enable yourself to shift and grow when you need to. But just to stick with technology, use it with caution, have some digital fasting. I spend time every day and as much as I can through a whole day, even though it's really not that, it's not even possible anymore. I will see somebody else's screen if I don't see my own. But digital fasting has been so huge for me to get away from the machines. And this came up on the call already with Chanel at the very beginning. Just avoid de-skilling yourself through convenience. Yes, I know that it's convenient that a machine will just send you words in the language that you're using every day. But that's not necessarily going to skill you in language learning, knowing what it is you need to learn and enabling you to go and find it yourself and to find speakers that you can actually speak with. The convenience is not necessarily convenient at the end of the day, because you get to the end of your life and you're like, oh, I never actually accomplished that goal. This app didn't help me or whatever. No, well, apps don't help people. You use the app to accomplish goals, and you set those goals intelligently in the way that we've defined intelligence today with the help of Crone Woman Walking. All right. Now, when you use the apps, you also got to be aware and very wary of the algorithm loops. So we know that the machines are studying our behaviors, and we know that they're showing us material afterwards. And so search is something that has become quite perilous. Search only if you want to be followed because you have searched. There's a lot of observation of what we're doing. And so one of the things, to do is to actually train the algorithms. So if you have a goal, it's much more pleasant for me to watch YouTube videos, for example, that I actually like and, mindless sort of stuff, blah, blah, blah. But in order to actually reach goals, I need to train the YouTube algorithm to maximize showing me the information that actually achieves the goals, right? So what would that be, for example? Well, instead of searching what I search over, which I'll just keep to myself, my videos that I like to watch, instead of searching for that, I have to do an ample amount of searching for things that hit my goals, such as Chinese or whatever. So Chinese music, but also, there's HS, I was going to say it in German, HSK. There's how do you say it in English? HSK levels that, I haven't completed yet. So I've got to pump those, make them just keep showing up. So if I'm going to have algorithms controlling my life, I might as well take the pain to program it to show me again and again and again. So at least I have the reminder of, well, you're not spending as much time as you could on Chinese, are you there? Right? It just remind me again and again. The chance that I click on one goes up, and bang presto, more Chinese exposure and more Chinese gets done. This is very, very simple. Otherwise, the algorithm will just show you a bunch of other stuff that you probably don't want. Now, here's the other thing, is you got to balance consumption with production. Sitting there and watching all the videos in the world that relate to your learning goal will not do anything. You've got to actually go, okay, how am I going to get all this Chinese memorized, or how am I going to get all this French memorized or Spanish memorized or whatever? And then you actually produce the mnemonic examples. And the technology is not that great at the end of the day, because you can press play and it's going to give you some new vocabulary words, and they got 3-hour videos filled with vocabulary, and you're going to play pause, and then this thing's going to be like and it's going to buzz and bang and bing, and then you're going to be off on this other thing. So books for vocabulary are very, very good, or audio programs that are separated from the actual internet. So when I do Chinese listening, it's on an app that doesn't go online, except for the rare occasion when I could need to transfer something over through Dropbox or whatever. But having a secondary device that is not part of the normal system is very, very useful for that. And then, I use an iPhone S4 from must be 2011 that have had it that long. And it's like, update me. No, No, and it won't even update anymore, I'm sure. And I do it on purpose so that it still just functions and allows me to accomplish certain tasks without all kinds of, modern stuff going on. All right, so that helps balance consumption with production because it's just not designed to be interrupted. It doesn't even have that functionality anymore with all the whiz-bang notifications and so forth. All right, so let's get into some drama now, because the next very, very important way to become a memory master is to honor and support your teachers. So CJ Known here a couple of days ago, actually on a comment on the replay of the previous live stream, he thought it would be a great way to accomplish his goal by saying, parroting me, "It's just known that memory palaces work, blah, blah, blah." His simply telling you to be mad enough to believe in the impossible. Well, it's not impossible, actually, and I'm not asking you to believe in it. In any case, this is the least likely way to get somebody to gladly help you. And if you go and watch that previous live stream and look at the comment history, you'll see I engaged with him and pointed out all the errors in his ways, and he apologized and said no offense or whatever. But I didn't take any offense. This is just an example of exactly how to lock yourself out of the skill. Because if you're, going to whine and cry and complain, then what are you trying to accomplish with this? This has nothing to do with anything. This just reveals a lack of wherewithal to get this done. Because the truth is that memory palaces don't work, and I never said that. You work the memory palaces. All I said is you have all the science in the world, and science, as I mention all the time, every time I mention it, obviously is not the most persuasive thing in the world, because if it were, there'd be no smokers, there'd be no alcoholics or people drinking to the point of alcoholism anyway, and yada, 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 yada. Knowledge is not intelligence, right? Knowing that things work is nothing to do with anything. So even if I do say the phrase from time to time, it works or whatever, the point is you do the work, right? And if this is the attitude that you bring, then it is going to be impossible. But it's not only known to be possible, but it's so ordinary to be able to memorize all that kind of stuff. It's not even close to being extraordinary in some sense. What's extraordinary about it is that some people develop the discipline and the skill and the consistency and the practice enough that they're able to do it. And so if you want help, as this person turned around and quickly asked for my help, as you can see, if you want to go look at the chat, how am I supposed to help them? The answer was obvious all along. You learn the techniques, you actually apply them, and you practice them consistently, and you do so in a way that matches goals you can actually achieve. Bang, presto, you made it work. So what is an example of a much more intelligent approach? Well, look at Mamunur here. It's quite small on the screen there, but I'll read it to you. He responds, there's nothing cooler than the memory palace in the world of memory. It's been used by memory champions for thousands of years. You don't have to just believe that the MP works. You can test its effectiveness anytime you want. It works. But I would say, again, you make it work. Regarding memorizing the main points, not verbatim word by word of a book, take all important points of the book chapter, convert each point to something visual or any other sense, put each visual marker image in the location's Loci station. This is known as linking. Memory palaces are links in a way. I'm not sure I would call that linking, but in any case, go through your Loci stations a couple of times and bang. 5, use spaced repetition to review the book from time to time, and this technique is so effective and quick that it is unbelievable. Yeah, except for it's not unbelievable because people do it all the time, right? So this is a great way to honor and support your teachers. Thank you, Mamunur. And one of the whole points is that we have to have a zero tolerance policy for self-aggrandizing, whining and crying in public, just in general, not just in this context, but across the board. When people are treating this beautiful technology that we have to get in touch with each other, to to basically have a sob story, we have to put our foot down. And you'll see that I have done that, and I'm now doing so live in front of an audience, because it's just that important. If we don't push back against this kind of behavior and demonstrate how to do better, then we're in danger of having the entire internet overrun by trolls. And that's not a beautiful internet to have. And, we talked about the lack of intelligence merely because people know multiple languages earlier today on one of our calls with Chrono and Walking. Look, we have to get together, those of us who have true intelligence, and start to honor and support our teachers at an even higher level. So I don't have it here today, but my Rationality Rules cup, it's just a small gesture, but got his cup because he needs the support. And he's another YouTuber. If you don't know Rationality Rules, somewhere around here, I have the Rationality Rules cup, and it's just a way, it's a minor thing, but a way of sharing support. And it can be as simple as leaving comments, hitting that thumbs up, or it can be as complex as getting whatever it is that they offer to the market. But it's very, very important. And one of the reasons why it's important from a practical learning thing is that essentially it breaks down to this: people who pay attention. It's just that simple. It's not universally true. You can learn a lot of stuff from free material on the internet, but there is no free. There's no such thing as free in the world. You've got to put your time into it. You've got to put your attention into it. You've got to put something that is dedicated and focused because you're invested in it. Skin in the game, as they say. And it's really, 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 really important. So now, does that have some special magic sauce and so forth? Well, maybe karma's real. I don't know. I think that it's real in the scientific sense of karma, which is that you are always taking action. Action you put into the world creates further action, and that action is going to be positive or negative. And so one of the things that personal mastery comes from is to be putting positive things out into the world in whatever way that you can. And we see that, this is something that's super, super important across the board. So your comments and your participation and thumbs up and all that stuff helps to train the robots, but it also just helps generally in terms of goodwill for the project. But in general, also letting me know when you've had success and when you've enjoyed something. And I didn't take a screenshot of it because it's quite long and complex, but Mamunur also on the Dominic system video explained how he uses the Katapayati also with the Dominic, and we have this interesting chat there. So there's lots of things in these conversations where a person like him is actually sharing something I never thought of before, which is essentially, well, you can go and find that video. It's the Dominic system video and read what we are talking about there. And if you're into number memorizing systems, it's just like, cliche, but mind blown. Why didn't I think of that before? Not necessarily that I'm going to go do it or whatever, but it's just like such an obvious thing. And that's the beauty of becoming, treating memory mastery as an act of becoming, a behavior, not a destination, a journey, not a destination, as we get from the great wisdom of David Berglas in A Question of Memory. And so that's why I work so much on building this community and really, as is said in this book, find the others, right? So find communities that are filled with supportive people. This is in the Douglas Rushkoff Team Human, and you've got to find the others. So if you're, one of those grouchy, grumbly people who's just like, try to find some place to just do that, and then change your mind and come and enjoy a much more positive sort of world. And we need to do something about all that grumbling, and we need to stand up to it. That was my point anyway. And it's kind of abstract, but it's somehow related to karma and karma yoga, is that we take care of our teachers and we take care of them as much as we can in the context that we can, so that they can continue to do what they do and also learn. So that's why I want to also thank Mamunur, because I learned so much from all of you who are part of this teaching, and you actually make it possible. So thank you for that. All right, Chronoman Walking. Well, thank you for that super chat. Really, really appreciate that. And skeptical inquiry of the self continues. Awesome. That's so good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for putting it into practice. Self-inquiry is huge. It's profound. The more you practice it, the better you get at it, the more that it will happen automatically. And you just be outside of yourself. And at least in my experience, it's kind of this beautiful, wonderful experience of just not really being involved in the world. It's hard to explain, but I sometimes have the wonderful chance to hang out with like a Zen master here in Brisbane, and I was explaining it to him, and I finally figured out a way to explain it. It's like being a video camera on a stick, and it's just moving around, and you're just watching it happen, and it's so beautiful. So I think that one of the ways we get that is by contributing positively and also standing up for positivity and really supporting it. It's supporting it by speaking out against the negativity that is there. Because, if you follow the Jonathan Haidt stuff, we can see that people are becoming highly sensitive. And one of the reasons they're being so highly sensitized is that they're just being pandered to, because we legitimately feel pain at the pain of others. Like we're not brutal savages. We have empathy, and we don't like to see others suffer. But then when we put things into place that don't help them deal with the reality that life has pain in it, we're really weakening all of civilization. And it's gotten to the point where, almost saying the name Jonathan Haidt could put one in danger of having their channel deleted. Like, it's unbelievable. But we got to stand up to it. So read Jonathan Haidt. All right. So now Brundheimer says, I often look at areas where I want to focus first and do what I can day by day to focus on the process and not the actual outcome that I crave. I would say that the solution to that is focus and really in our mind. Enjoy the daily practice, and one day you will get there. Well, yeah, and I would say, who cares? Like, so what if you don't? Wouldn't you rather have had an amazing journey that was fulfilling every single day than what's going to happen when you achieve your goal? Well, now you just got another goal that you have to achieve. And you can access Jonathan's insight on Eisenhower's decision matrix. I really love that. To declutter the load, I often have to have the reflex to impose to myself. Yeah. Great. And I'm glad you mentioned the Eisenhower decision matrix. There's so many tools. I'm going to give you another tool in a minute. It's a little bit different, but the thing is, you got to use the tools. You got to use them a number of times to really start to explore. As Jason was mentioning with Sudoku and Morse code, it's like you persist, and then whoa. And then the thing is you keep persisting and persisting and persisting, and you see more depths in things than you ever imagined possible through repeat practice. It's amazing. That's why I recommend card practice. There's so many revelations I have about this. The more that I do it, it's unbelievable. It's like it never ends. The new things you learn. And with memory as such, the more that I put memory practice into practice, it's like, whoa. And your eyes are only open to it when you're practicing. Otherwise, you just miss too many things. All right. So let me know if you're just joining us. Hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And you can call 1-508-263-0530 if you'd like to add your voice to our live stream. We've had some wonderful, wonderful discussions so far. Glad that it's working out. All right. So when you're going to honor your teacher, one of the things, I did make it. I can't believe that I forgot. I did. But it was under a different context. So we'll get to that. But here we go. Honor and support your teachers. So instead of complaining, document the steps that you've taken, demonstrate your project and your progress, and share your FOS. So this is different than the Eisenhower decision matrix, but it ultimately makes a matrix of sorts. So FOS is fears, opportunities, and strengths. And this is more for like when, you're looking at an opportunity to do something like train your memory, become a memory master, and you know that it's going to take practice. You know that you're going to need to spend some time at it, and you know that you're going to do it for life, because you're not a memory master if you're not going to practice your memory every day, right? This is just the basic qualification, is daily use of your memory with practice, to explore the techniques further and to study them some more, implement them some more, practice them with a bit more challenge than the day before, or maybe less challenge because you're doing you're reducing challenge strategically. And speaking of reducing challenge strategically, for those of you in the masterclass, I should not neglect to mention that I've updated the card memorization course with 7 new videos. And they have some exercises, one of which is a reduction of challenge suggestion strategically. You won't find it a reduction of challenge. It's actually an increase of challenge through the reduction of challenge. You have to check it out to see what I mean. All right. But the FOS, fears, opportunities, strengths, it's not really a matrix, but you make 3 columns. And so say you're going to say, I'm going to be a memory master. I'm going to take the free course if you haven't already, or I'm just going to dive into the master class. I'm all in. I got skin in the game. I'm going to do it. So you might be like, oh, wait. I don't know if it's right for me, right? So you got to look at your fears, your opportunities, and your strengths. This will help you in every step of the way. So what are your fears? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Really, just start to write it all down. What is the worst thing that could happen? So, Maricela talks about all these many things. Well, what if you just let all of it go and just focus on one thing? And maybe you have some fears around that. Well, what are your fears? What are the actual fears? By processing them out, you may find that they disappear in that moment. Or you might say, you know what, that's a legitimate problem. That is an issue. I need to get a strategy and figure out how to remove that issue. There's lots of those, like some of the stuff that I'm doing, studying the internet, learning the internet, there's some legitimate fears. Like if I click this button and I make a mistake, can I actually reverse it? Such as in Google Tag Manager. Well, I did this. Like, what is my fear? And all these things. And then I thought, well, I could take screenshots. I can let my tech guy know before I do anything because, that would be wise. And turns out that, Google Tag Manager has a rollback thing or whatever. But I was genuinely afraid about it. And then I just went through this exercise and I was able to find some strategies for what to do in case that I make a mistake. It's like so common sense that it slips even me sometimes. So I need to do this often, the FOS. Now, in terms of opportunity, what's the opportunity? Well, if you really learn memory techniques, you can learn so much faster. You can pass exams with so much greater ease. You can just be whipping it out left, right, and center with amazing mnemonic examples that really stick in your head. You can remember the names of all the people you meet, etc., etc., etc. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Like, it's really, really fulfilling. It's personally fulfilling on top of passing exams and getting to speak languages and getting a raise at your job and yada, yada, yada. So, but you got to be clear about what those opportunities are and what it is that you actually want. And knowing what you want is not necessarily being clear about why you want it and what you're willing to do to get it. So what is your opportunity? And in that, you can think about how much time you actually have for the opportunity, how much time you need for the opportunity, etc. But get very, very clear about the opportunity there. And then your strengths, right? So what are your strengths right now that are going to enable you to get rid of the fear and focus on the opportunity so you can make it happen? Very, very simple exercise, but in terms of memory, you might think, well, my strengths are that I have a notebook. It's just that simple. You have the strength of having a notebook so you can complete some exercises. And, well, I have an internet connection so I can study the course. And this guy says, well, you got to watch videos all the way through and take notes. And, well, I got internet, I got videos, I got paper, so I can do that. And then you do it, and then you'd be amazed by what happens just by that simple thing. But you might have other strengths already. Like, for example, most people have, most adults anyway, have, if not a decade, many decades of exposure to popular culture. Now, you might not be as sharp as a whistle and fast at like, oh, I'm going to use this to memorize that, but you have the same amount of exposure to popular culture as everybody else your age in your demographic. So that might not mean you have the same as a cartoon viewer, but you'll have some depth of exposure that's already in your mind. And so you can then build on that strength and increase the speed of access from your, so to speak, random access memory of what it is you already know and how you know it through some simple exercises. So a lot of people don't realize just how much of a strength they have coming into memory techniques to make associations. They're thinking that they have to create it cold, which is not what memory technique association is about. They think they have to create it cold, but you don't have to create it cold. You're advised not to come at it cold. If you run from that, you want to just use what's already there and cultivate it. So that's a strength that a lot of people aren't aware of, and that's why we're here, to try and make more people aware of it. And so let me know if you have any questions about the FOS and all that sort of stuff. And then the sixth thing that's so important is to experiment. If you want to be a memory master, you've got to experiment. So Mamunur, I somehow had a memory blip there, but he made this contribution, but again, it's not something we can really make readable in this particular format. But go and watch that, or go and check out that on the Dominic system discussion, and really blown away by what he suggested there and how easy that is. And then you'll see my response to him. And so it's very, very powerful. And you've got to do experiments like that. When you see something like that, and you're like, yeah, I got a major 00 to 99. That is wicked awesome. Then go and experiment with it. Do it. So there's so many experiments you can run with memory techniques. Look, we got 4 years of the memory vault in the mastermind program. There's so many experiments that you can run in there. You'd never run out. And the reason why you'd never run out is because every new one that you try will give you ideas for more. But then you've got to go and experiment with them. All right, let's check in with our chat. Chronoman Walking says she's excited to do. Awesome. Bam. we need some kind of signal, the magnetic memory method signal. Maybe this. Yeah, it's almost like MMM. Memorize long and memorize some more while you prosper. Something like that. All right. Or Megaston Topos Hapantagar Kori. Megaston Topos Hapantagar Kori. I haven't said it for so long, it didn't come out so smooth. Which is Space's ultimate, for it contains all things, from the great scientist and philosopher Thales. Maricella says, I have fears about to make time to study all in different times to complete my courses, to have a vision about what I want and keep going to look ahead, about my mother and my brother and health. Great. So what are your opportunities to reduce those fears, and what strengths do you have to be able to overcome them? Again, this fears, opportunity, strengths model, very, very powerful. So just write them down, then think of the opportunities to solve them and the strengths that you're going to draw upon to get it done. This is pretty much a daily thing for me. You got to constantly reconfigure your mind, and it's part of being, as Tony Buzan used to call it, a warrior of the mind. So very, very important. Very important. And experiment like crazy. Super, super important. Brunheimer says, making memory practice a daily practice is the key. I don't see how it can happen otherwise. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I've certainly gone through periods where I didn't practice every day, but to get running, like it really, you need to come back to it and not think about it. Actually do it. It's very, very important. So many people get caught up in the thinking of it. All right. Karagami says, I've not been able to stay consistent with learning memory techniques. Any suggestions? You are awesome, by the way. Great. So consistency, we talk a lot about consistency, and the suggestions are pretty much always the same because they're pretty much universal rules. But you've got to make a schedule, and you've got to show up to that schedule, and you got to do it even if you don't feel like it. And you got to do it over time, like at least 90 days. There's all kinds of powerful architecture that you can use, such as journals, to track your progress. And so those are some tips. And to go back and watch this when the replay has finished rendering, so you can check the beginning and listen to Jason's contribution about, how by sticking with a particular training program, it suddenly clicks. So that's important. Also, the point about letting go of the outcome is going to be important as well, so that it can click, so you don't get in your own way. Just enjoy the ride. So thanks for that, Kirigami. Let me know if you have any more angles around that question, and just dive in and be consistent. I know that sounds simplistic, but it really is that simple. It is that simple. And, think about your why. Tell us now in the chat, Kirigami, why do you want to use memory techniques in the first place? Because consistency is key. And maybe you just don't have a big enough reason why. Look, there's things that I sort of would like to learn, but I don't have a big enough reason why to go and do it. So I don't. And to be honest, there's no shame in not having a big enough why to do things. Yeah, it'd be nice or whatever. But, find what it is inside of you that's driven. Now, in terms of memory training, I think everybody has a big enough why. If you don't, then you might need to go to the doctor and tighten some screws. There might be some depression there. Maybe you're not sleeping properly. But everybody should be switched on to, wow, I need this memory training for something. And that something is big enough to run the show. But if not, then there's probably a different problem at stake. All right, so if you would like, we're going to go into the 7th point on how to become a memory master. And so get your chat ready, get your numbers ready if you want to call in to 1-508-263-0530, and let's rock and roll. Now, you've got to continuously grow and tend and use your memory palace network. And that means that you're consistently creating new memory palaces and you're putting them into use so that you're using all of the memory techniques and you're challenging yourself. So as some of you know, I'm doing a huge challenge right now, and it's a bit annoying, but I'm growing with it slowly, which is to use outdoor memory palaces that don't have the same ease of use. And that's just part of the thing. And, really weird ones that I would never use before, that sort of, they don't cross their own path, but they backtrack on themselves in a weird way. And here's problems that you don't have if you're not on the journey. There's a certain one, I've sort of solved it, but in terms of, because of the way the path goes, and then it backs and it goes above itself, before it got into long-term memory, when I wanted to recite what was up here, I would impulsively want to recite what was here. So there's an advanced problem that you're only going to have when you're doing these experiments or whatever. But it was why is that happening? And it's just due to the nature of, well, when I go normally, if I was going to go there, yes, that it's now in the same memory palace almost because of the way that it is there. And it's just, well, you just don't allow yourself to get frustrated, even though it is frustrating. You just say, there's some frustration, breathe. And it's just super powerful, but it's cool. It's it's a thing I never thought would ever happen. And it's happening because of raising the level of challenge. And then I think of some strategies to make that not happen. And, so far so good. All right. And one of the ways that you continue to grow, of course, is to keep reading the tradition. So I've suggested today that one book that you really definitely want to read is A Question of Memory by David Burglas, and read it thoroughly from beginning to end a couple of the times and really understand his key point that memory is not a thing, but a behavior. Very, very important. Maricella says, I find fun in memory techniques, but more than that, they will help me improve my mind and get what I want. Too much that are my dreams come a reality to pass the test to improve my professional life. Excellent, excellent. So improving your professional life is amazing. I mean, I'm sure you have a big why there because you want to serve people better, which is a great, great thing. So keep reading the tradition. And, don't ever trick yourself into, oh, well, I already know this, and flip, and skip, and I'm not going to do that exercise. Don't do that to yourself, because repetition is always difference. It's very important to understand that nothing is the same. It's not possible because it's a different moment. You're a different person, and repetition is always difference. All right. And yeah, as we mentioned, support the future of memory training, authentic memory training. That's very, very important so that you can continue to bump into it. And there's lots of great teachers out there, and they all need your support. And I do what I can to support them as well. Some of them strangely make it very, very difficult to get them on the podcast, but maybe not enough of you have asked them, why aren't you on the podcast yet? And that might make some movement, but I understand the world is complicated, and persistence does pay off, because I've been able to get some guests that I didn't think would ever show up, but there they are. All right. And here's the number one thing above all that's so important. You've got to learn these techniques. You got to use them to memorize some stuff, and then you got to teach them. You won't really understand them as completely as you could if you don't teach them. And you might not believe that, but it's true. Even if it's just to your friend, and that's all it needs to be. You don't need to get a website. You don't need to start a YouTube channel, although please do. It would help the project. But you've got to have done it and then explain it to other people in order to understand better what it is. And it'll improve your practice. It's very, very impossible for it not to improve your practice. So that's the ultimate step, really, is to actually do it. And, I get emails all the time from teachers saying, how would you teach this to the students? You learn the techniques, memorize some stuff, then you teach them. Don't just pass this on and hey, there's some memory techniques, That's fine. That's fine. But that's being a recommendation machine. What you want to do is actually be a change machine and actually help people and actually show them what you did and explain the things that you discovered in your experience with that information. So the chemistry teacher should memorize some stuff pertaining to chemistry and then teach the students the memory techniques from that basis. The math teacher should do that as well. The language teacher should do that as well. The English teacher should say, hey, you know how I memorized this poem? Well, this is how I did it. And then share it from something that's going to actually connect with the students from the experience of the teacher, the lived, the earned experience of the teacher. Very, very important. And it's just not going to work out nearly as well unless you just want to, be a recommendation machine, which it has its place. But anyway, that's always my answer. Same thing when people email me and they say, oh, I want my kids to learn this. You learn it. You need it too. And then show it to them. Man, look, my dad, I mentioned today, he's an amazing mechanic and auto body fabricator, whatever you call it, when people take old cars and restore them and make them new. He actually has to make his own stuff. He gets the materials and makes parts or whatever. That didn't inspire me to go and do that, but it had the residual effect of some sort of craftsmanship, working towards better learning skills and making things as better as they can, progressing towards that. So even if your kids don't wind up taking up your fascination with memory techniques or whatever, what they will learn from you is dedication to skill and dedication to goals, and showing them, demonstrating to them, and teaching them the ins and outs of skill acquiring, how to acquire a skill, and how to apply that skill to accomplishing goals. That'll be worth so much more than if they then use the memory techniques themselves, because you will have that in your family. So it could be pi, or it could be whatever you want to memorize. Just teach them from your experience rather than, well, I want this for my kids because it'd be good for them. You be good for them, and it'll be much better. It'll work out much better in the end. All right, Karagami says, for me, I'm going to devote a few years of my life to crack one of the toughest exams in my country. I'm gearing up for that. That's my reason for learning these techniques. All right, well, Karagami, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And then, you might want to I don't know. There's many different things you could try. But if you're tracking your memory training progress, then, let's say you got a deck of cards. And by the way, I wish somebody would send me, I've never seen what decks of cards look like in India. So it'd be awesome if somebody would send me some cards from India, because I'd love to see them. But get some cards next to a journal and just say 45 days or whatever it is, 450 days until the exam. And then have that journal beside your bed or wherever you're going to see it every single day and write down, I memorized this many cards. This was my accuracy. And then use those techniques throughout the day to actually memorize what it is that pertains to the exam. So that little bit of practice, now you've attached it to the goal. You want to ace that exam. You want to be a master so that you can ace that exam. You segment out all of the information that you need to memorize for it. And then every morning you have, and it's just simple. It's like the most incredibly profound thing you can get. It's got the day and then some space to write. And you just put memorized the cards. And I have here what I memorized, and it goes back and it goes back and it goes back. And I don't write anything else there, but it's just memory training every single day. And it's right here. I always see it every day. I come into this room and my deck of cards is right there. It's just absolutely beautiful, wonderful, and it helps keep my memory sharp, makes it so much faster so that I'm able to, remember to use the techniques, and I'm switched on. Love it. It's beautiful. So I hope that helps. Kirigami says, also, I love learning in general, as do I, as do all of us, I think. So wonderful about that. All right. So, that's really what it takes. I'm sure that there are some things that I maybe didn't think of that belong to how to become a memory master. But to sum it all up, it's really, really just about practicing with goals, and goals that you actually can accomplish so that you can then fashion better or more ambitious goals later. Not necessarily better, but more ambitious goals later. So that's it in a nutshell. But there's some ins and outs, as we talked about today. And I really appreciate everybody who took advantage of the opportunity to call that number. And let me know in the chat if you would like me to do that again, or send me an email, or otherwise leave a comment below if you're watching the replay of the live stream. And I'll be around for just a few more minutes if anybody has any last comments or questions, and then we'll call it a day. And this is your chance if you want to make use of that number now. Thank you, everybody, for today, and really go deep on this. Go deep and really, really, decide, say, hell yeah, be all in. You're going to become a memory master, and understand that it is really, to become what you're going to become, you have to be that thing. And it's very, very simple. It's very, very easy. And all you need to do is decide to do it and make it simple. Understand it's a game, and you get to design some of the rules of the game, and you get to actually, understand more about the rules of the game because you're the player. And you're the only one who can play. So Maricella says, thank you for your time and information. You're welcome, Maricella, very, very much. Crone Woman Walking says, any benefit to learning French phrases instead of individual words to master French fluency? Right. So that's a good question. It's actually a very, very important question. So Ollie Richards and I, we had this long ongoing sort of conversation about this, and I won, I think. I don't know. You have to ask his opinion as well. But, it's just like all the language learning gurus are like, in context, always learn vocabulary and phrases, always learn. And this rubs me the wrong way. It's not true. There's no always. There's no general statement here. There are some words that not only can be memorized in isolation, but they should be memorized in isolation because they're used almost in isolation. And not only that, but every word is presentable in some isolation, even though it's never in isolation because there's the word and the definition. But it's just kind of like this ridiculous advice. Now, I'm not disagreeing that you should memorize words in context, but from a mnemonic perspective and the mnemonic actuality, you need to actually know how to memorize individual words if you're going to use mnemonics for phrases, right? But then you move from the memorization of the word to memorizing the phrase, right? And then you can move very quickly because that's how you compound, that's how you scale. And if you take the How to Learn and Memorize Vocabulary course in the masterclass, that's the whole point. Is just like, let go of the phrases for now, focus on memorizing words. Then when you want to memorize words at scale, you go through first pass, memorize words, vocabulary, whatever that is. Then second pass, add a phrase to every word, right? It's very, very simple. And just like an example, Junbei in Chinese, ready or whatever. There's a couple meanings for it, but I memorize that. Then I go back and ni Junbei halama, which is, are you ready? And so it's very, very simple. Now, from time to time, I will memorize something as an entire phrase. Like, for example, my wife mentioned some time ago, 我们离开一千说了这个事. And so I memorized that all in one go, but I know most of the words in there, So it's kind of one or the other. So that's really, really important from my perspective. But absolutely, there is a benefit to learning phrases, but there's no benefit from dropping the memorization of vocabulary, which is always useful to do and always will happen, because the more fluent you get in a language, the more you're going to just need individual words that you don't know, right? So, like, for example, with the woman Li Kai example, it's like, well, I know those words, right? But then I know a bunch of words, know all kinds of things. I understand what's going on and so forth. But then what do I do? Must I then memorize a phrase for a new word? No, I can just memorize the word, right? So this is my experience with things. This is my take on it. At the end of the day, it's not really a right or wrong thing. It's just how informed are you? And that's why I'm really, really, I stand up when people bully the mnemonics thing, because they do. And I mentioned it earlier today when one particular thing came up, because it's such a brilliant technique. He doesn't seem to realize that it is a mnemonic that he's teaching, but then he speaks down to memory techniques when he's teaching memory techniques, and his memory techniques would be so much better if they involved, and I know they would be better because I've done it. I've actually used that technique and added mnemonics, and it's way better. And it's a lot more fun. It's not boring anymore, because it is boring for most sane people, and maybe for some that aren't so sane. It's just better. Everything's better with memory techniques. And in fact, most polyglots will tell you that they actually use creative. If they're using rote learning, they're using creative rote. And it's not rote at all. It's not rote at all. So I hope that's answering your question. But the direct thing is that you always get a benefit from memorizing phrases, but you never get a benefit from not memorizing words anymore. It will always be necessary to memorize new words. I'm pretty good in German. I still have to memorize new words in German. It's never going to end, because even native speakers don't know all the words in German. All right. Let's see here. Thank you for that question. Karagami says, I'll definitely send you the pictures of Indian playing cards. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for the support. We'll work on MMM techniques. Awesome. Maricella says, I want to try with cards to memorize information. Awesome. And normally students laughing about my voice and say that instead of English, I speak German. So I'm careful to try to talk live. I don't really have any negative things to say about how people talk. And, falls du Deutsch sprechen kannst? Sprechen wir. Gerne. Also. Did I even say that correctly? Falls du Deutsch sprechen kannst? Yeah. All right. Sprechen wir. We will. I haven't spoken German very much lately at all, but I sure miss it. I know Chanel was practicing some German, and Es klingt gut. I actually need to start thinking about finding some more people to speak German with, actually, because I don't want to de-skill too much, but I'm doing a bit of an experiment. I'm wondering how long it would take to de-skill, because there's some research in bilingualism that de-skilling of a second language can take 35 years. Now, I'm not going to do that long of an experiment, but I'm not speaking enough to see just how de-skilled that I may have become. But I'm always shocked when I do do read, and when I do speak, I'm just like, it's not too bad. It's kind of fun. It's an interesting question. But it's one of those experiments you don't want to take too seriously, because the outcome isn't a pleasant one. If you really do de-skill yourself to the point that you couldn't have a conversation. But in any case, I'm not sure how my German was right there. But ja, falls du Deutsch sprechen kannst, dann sprechen wir gerne. Also, okay, well, thanks everybody. I've really had a great time today, and thank you especially to our callers for helping me test that out. And yeah, let me know if you'd like to do it again. And until we have a chance to speak again, thank you, and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
384626 4338 3279 5028 84 1971 69 399375.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I've taken a few courses by Anthony Metivier, but I felt that the experience of doing it today live was the biggest advantage. Anthony has a gift in simplifying complex concepts, and I feel that I've really come away today with practical skills that I can now use effectively. It was great to immerse ourselves in the situation, to be able to apply the time, because when we're at home we may not take the time to do the memory exercises that we were doing today. I felt particularly that the thing that we did at the end of today was something that is totally unique in memory training, which is 3 days of memory, which is how to practice your skills. I've read many memory books, and I've never come across a system laid out as to how to practice what you've learned, and this is what I gained today from Anthony's course. So I'd give it 10 out of 10. Thank you.
5342 1170 679. Three 384626 4338 3279 5028 84 1971 69 399375.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I've taken a few courses by Anthony Metivier, but I felt that the experience of doing it today live was the biggest advantage. Anthony has a gift in simplifying complex concepts, and I feel that I've really come away today with practical skills that I can now use effectively. It was great to immerse ourselves in the situation, to be able to apply the time, because when we're at home we may not take the time to do the memory exercises that we were doing today. I felt particularly that the thing that we did at the end of today was something that is totally unique in memory training, which is 3 days of memory, which is how to practice your skills. I've read many memory books, and I've never come across a system laid out as to how to practice what you've learned, and this is what I gained today from Anthony's course. So I'd give it 10 out of 10. Thank you.
5342 1170 679.